Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the Most Beautiful Banknotes. This will be episode number 10, and today we're talking about the 5,000 shilling of Austria 1988. But before that, just some quick overview of Austria itself. And of course, this banknote will be a bit about remember some older glories. It's interesting to understand that although Austria today is a relatively small country in Europe, in Central Europe, it was not always like that. Austria was an empire. The Austrian Empire was relatively big and flourished in the 17th and 18th and also in the 19th century, especially with Charles III and then Marie Theresa as the most iconic and charismatic monarchs at that time in an empire that you can see here on the picture would just be Austria today, but also part of the Balkans, like Croatia, what is now today Croatia, Bosnia, Slovenia, most of Hungary, Slovakia, small parts of Germany, the Czech Republic, and even some parts of Romania and the Ukraine, what is nowadays the Ukraine, and Poland. So it was a relatively big empire. Of course, especially after the First World War, um, there was no more empire. It was Austro-Hungary, but even that didn't last for much longer. And still, with the Second World War and Nazism, Austria was even for a few years under a protectorate of the four winning forces of the Second World War, and basically the territory is nowadays what it was there. It's a 10 million people country with historical significance and some beautiful towns, but not the political influence that it once had in Europe. That said, Austria had a few different series after the Second World War. This was, by all means, actually the last series. There were another two banknotes besides this series that came up in the late 90s, the 500 and the 1000. But the 100, the 50, and the 20, these were the last ones, and also the 5,000 that we were talking about today. After that came the euro, and the Austrian shilling was no more. So this series itself, as you see, it's about remarkable Austrian individuals. You probably would recognize here from the banknotes Schrödinger or Freud or Sigmund Freud there, or well, Otto Wagner. Others are well less known, I would say, especially internationally, but they are of Austrian importance. Today we're actually talking, and the banknote that makes this is this wonderful 5,000 shilling. 5,000 shilling that is still today tradable for the exchange rate to the euro at around 365 euros or $400. The banknote was never actually really used on the day-to-day transactions. I was never in Austria this time because I was not at that age. My father tells me that this banknote was almost unseen in real circulation, but it's there. It's actually the first banknote also that has a kinogram, which is this here, which is a security device that was not so widely used afterwards. And in the front, it depicts, of course, probably one of the most famous Austrians of all time, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, which was actually born in Salzburg in 1756, which was at the time actually not part of Austria. It was part of the Holy Roman Empire that in the end became Germany, let's put it like that. Um, Mozart was, of course, deemed to be a genius, a musical genius since a young age, especially people that know about composing and musical history would see that this is one of the most important, influential musicians of all time. Made around 600 different works, and well, since the age of 17, he actually lived in Vienna, where the court of the Austrian Empire was. So he moved from Salzburg to Vienna, where he lived until his death at the age of 35. So he had a relatively early death, Of course, the standards at the time was not that people would live so long, but still 35 was a younger age, and he is still considered nowadays to be the exponent of the Austrian classicism. That was not just music, but also architecture, and you would see a lot of it in Vienna if you visit. Nevertheless, here Mozart, like I said, died in 35 years of age. How he died, it's still not completely known, and it's a case of a lot of debate, including something that I would tell you in the end. The back is not so impressive, especially in comparing to the front. You'll have basically a building in the front, which is the Vienna State Opera, the Staatsoper, which was inaugurated actually way after Mozart was dead, almost 100 years later. And the reason it's here is that when it was inaugurated in the late 19th century, the first opera was Don Juan, which is an opera of Mozart. And on the right side, you see a statue. This is a bronze statue that is in the Magic Flute Mountain fountain, which is in Mozartsplatz, also. So the square of Mozart, also in Vienna. The Magic Flute, you will also know, people that know about music, it's also an important piece from Mozart. This banknote is, of course, not cheap. Like I said, you can still trade it for around $400. So, actual price of the issued banknote, I've seen a few go out for around the 550, 575 euro dollars, but in uncirculated. But it's most probably that you will get it at 600, 600 and something. Very fine. I've seen ones close to fair value, so around the $400. Um, the banknote book actually says the very fine should be around $200, but that's not possible because the banknote is still tradable in the bank and the Central Bank of Austria for its fair value. The specimen, well, there are not so many registers of specimens being sold. I noticed only two. One that was very fine at $431, and the other one, which isn't circulated, at $1,100. Specimen is by itself actually not that amazing. Um, I put it here also. It has Muster, which means specimen in German, and it's interesting because the watermark that you see here is the Austrian. Um, it's really the Austrian eagle in a well, in a format that is a bit stylized, but it's interesting here to see it, and you see it better in this picture than in the one before. So maybe this not so much about banknotes, but why is it Mozart still today so influent? And you see this in different things. I mean, there it remains a symbol of, mm, I would say, as a rock star, but from the 18th century, with music that was revolutionary at the time, and still things are being done uh, with him. I mean, we had in the 80s a movie that won a few Oscars called Amadeus. This was a movie from Milos Forman, and this movie actually depicts the life of Mozart and also his fictionized rivalry with Salieri, another composer at the time from Italy that was also living in Vienna. And that's the point of his death. So here in this movie, the for you that want to see it, basically depicts how he died, and this is also of course fictionized. But it's interesting for you to get a grip of this still being a debate today. Another interesting thing is maybe most of you that are younger do not know, but there was an Austrian rock singer called Falco, and he had his biggest success at international scene was a music called "Rock Me Amadeus," which was actually a very fun vibe. Tourism in Salzburg, especially, it's mostly based on um, Mozart. One of these top sightseeings is the Mozart's Geburtshaus, which is the house where he was theoretically born, and you see a lot of people dressed as composers or as, well, 18th century players roaming the streets in Salzburg, especially if you go around the summertime to visit. Last but not least, there's some bonbons, some chocolates. They're called Mozartkugeln. These are very popular in Central and Eastern Europe, and I'm not really sure why they have Mozart in the front, but this is also something that is very popular. Good. I hope that you enjoyed this video and you learned something today. If you have any comments, any suggestions, please let me know. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.